The Astrine Empire's warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls reflecting Earth's sun like 1,000 deadly mirrors. Admiral Elena Santos watched from the bridge of the EDS Prometheus, her expression neutral despite the overwhelming odds. 300 Astrine capital ships against Earth's seemingly modest defense fleet of 50 vessels. The aliens had expected an easy victory. That was their first mistake. They're broadcasting their demands. Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Chen reported, his hand steady on the tactical console. Standard Astrine Conquest Protocol. They're offering us the chance to surrender and become a protected species under their dominion. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Just as intelligence predicted, they always follow the same playbook. Initiate Operation Shadowcast. Throughout Earth's defense fleet, hidden systems began to power up. Systems that had been deliberately masked from all standard detection methods. The Astrines had spent decades studying Earth from afar, cataloging human technology, assessing military capabilities. But they had never understood humanity's greatest strength, the ability to learn from history. All ships reporting ready, Admiral, Chen announced. Quantum entanglement network is stable. The mesh is online. The mesh, humanity's secret weapon. While other species developed bigger ships and more powerful weapons, Earth's scientists had taken a different approach. They had created a neural network that linked not just their ship's computers, but the minds of their crews. Not direct neural integration that would have been too obvious, too detectable. Instead, they had developed quantum-based artificial synapses that allowed human intuition and creativity to flow between ships like water. The Astrine fleet began their standard attack pattern, breaking into precisely calculated formations. Their tactics hadn't changed in centuries. They hadn't needed to, until now. They're launching their first wave, Chen reported. 300 fighter squadrons, exactly as their manual dictates. Elena nodded. Deploy the ghosts. From the seemingly vulnerable Earth ships, thousands of tiny objects burst forth. To Astrine sensors, they appeared to be debris, chaff, or simple countermeasures. Their rigid tactical computers classified them as non-threats. That was their second mistake. Each piece of debris was actually a quantum-linked drone, smaller than a human fist, powered by microscopic fusion cells. Alone, they were virtually powerless. But linked through the mesh, guided by the collective intuition of hundreds of human operators, they became something else entirely. The Astrine fighters flew into what they thought was a simple debris field. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by a constantly shifting, three-dimensional maze of quantum disruption fields. Their shields flickered and failed. Their navigation systems showed them phantom targets. Their perfectly coordinated formations dissolved into chaos. First wave is neutralized, Chen reported, unable to keep the satisfaction from his voice. No casualties on either side. The drones are performing exactly as designed. Elena leaned forward in her command chair. This was the crucial moment. The Astrines had never faced an enemy that could defeat their fighters without destroying them. Their tactical doctrine had no protocol for this situation. The massive Astrine capital ships hung in space, their crystalline forms gleaming as their commanders tried to process what had just happened. Their entire military philosophy was based on overwhelming force and perfect coordination. But how do you fight an enemy that turns your own precision against you? They're powering up their main guns, Chen announced. Looks like they're falling back on brute force. Typical. Perfect, Elena said. Deploy Phase 2. Let's show them why humanity hasn't had a major war on Earth in 50 years. As the Astrine dreadnoughts prepared to fire their planet-cracking weapons, the quantum drones began to move again. But this time, they weren't acting as individual units. Through the mesh, guided by hundreds of linked human minds, they began to flow together like mercury, forming impossible geometric patterns that seemed to fold through dimensions that shouldn't exist. The Astrines had superior technology in almost every way. But they had never imagined that their supposedly primitive opponents would master quantum physics at this level. They had never conceived that humans would choose to develop technology that worked with thought and intuition rather than raw power. That was their final mistake. All ships, execute Operation Shadowcast, Elena commanded. Show them what humanity can really do. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. It marked the day when the galaxy learned that measuring a species' advancement by their weapons alone was a dangerous mistake. Sometimes, the most powerful force in the universe isn't the size of your ships or the strength of your weapons. Sometimes, it's the ability to think differently. In the depths of the EDS Prometheus, Dr. Maya Patel stood in the heart of what the crew called the hive. The circular chamber pulsed with a soft blue glow as thousands of quantum processors worked in perfect harmony. But the true power of the mesh wasn't in its hardware. It was in the 100 human operators seated in reclined chairs around the room, their minds linked through quantum entanglement into something greater than the sum of its parts. Status report. Admiral Santos's voice came through the comm system. Above them, the battle continued to unfold as the Astrian fleet struggled to adapt to humanity's unconventional tactics. Maya checked the neural feedback readings on her holographic display. The mesh is holding stable at 97% synchronization. The collective is processing tactical data faster than any AI we've ever developed. That was the breakthrough that had changed everything. Early in humanity's space age, they had tried to develop conventional AI systems to match the computational power of their alien neighbors. But they had discovered something unexpected. The human brain's ability to make intuitive leaps and recognize patterns couldn't be replicated by artificial intelligence. So instead of trying to build better AIs, they had found a way to link human minds together, amplifying their natural abilities. "They're adapting," one of the operators called out, his voice distant as most of his consciousness flowed through the mesh. "The Astrian ships are attempting to rewrite their combat protocols in real time." Maya smiled. The aliens were trying to use machine learning to counter human unpredictability, but they were still thinking like machines, trying to find patterns where there were none. "Show me," she said, and the holographic display shifted to show the battle above. The Astrian fleet had abandoned their rigid formations, their ships moving in more organic patterns. They were learning, but not fast enough. Through the mesh, Maya could feel the collective consciousness of the operators as they guided the quantum drones. Each operator contributed their unique perspective and intuition, creating a battle strategy that was both chaos and art. The drones moved like schools of fish, like flocks of birds, like swarms of insects, natural patterns that had evolved over millions of years on Earth. "Dr. Patel," Admiral Santos's voice came through again. "The Astrians are preparing something big. Their flagship is channeling an enormous amount of energy." Maya closed her eyes and opened her mind fully to the mesh. The collective consciousness of 100 human operators flowed through her, each contributing their expertise. A former artist saw patterns in the enemy's movement that a tactical computer would miss. A chess master predicted their strategies 6 moves ahead. A child prodigy in quantum physics spotted vulnerabilities in their shield harmonics. "They're going to try to overload our quantum field generators," Maya announced. "They think if they can disrupt the mesh, our advantage disappears." She paused, feeling the collective consciousness process this information. "They're right, but they don't understand what they're really facing." The Astrian flagship's crystal spires began to glow with accumulated energy. Their sensors had finally identified the quantum field generators as the source of humanity's strange capabilities. In response, they were preparing to unleash a massive burst of anti-quantum radiation, a brute force solution typical of their approach to warfare. But the human operators in the hive had already anticipated this move. Through the mesh, they didn't just share thoughts. They shared instincts. 100 different perspectives combined to see the bigger picture. "Initiating Protocol Omega," Maya announced. "All operators prepare for full synchronization." The blue glow in the hive intensified as the quantum processors spooled up to maximum capacity. The operators' breathing synchronized, their heartbeats falling into rhythm. Through the mesh, they became something that had never existed before in human history. A collective consciousness that retained all the creativity and intuition of its individual parts. Above, the Astrian flagship fired its anti-quantum pulse. A wave of distortion spread out through space, designed to disrupt any quantum-based technology in its path. It was their most powerful weapon, capable of shutting down any known quantum system. But the mesh wasn't just a quantum system. It was a hybrid of technology and human consciousness, and consciousness couldn't be so easily disrupted. As the pulse approached Earth's fleet, the quantum drones began to move in impossible patterns, guided by the collective intuition of the hive. What followed would rewrite the galaxy's understanding of warfare. The Astrians had brought overwhelming force and advanced technology. Humanity had brought something else: the ability to turn their greatest evolutionary advantage, their complex, adaptable brains, into a weapon that no artificial system could match. The battle for Earth was about to enter its final phase, and the galaxy would never be the same. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council erupted into chaos as the holographic display showed the impossible: an Astrian battle fleet in full retreat. The circular chamber, with its towering crystalline walls and ancient symbols of power, had never witnessed such disorder among its members. High Counselor Zixtal, their chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's ethereal lights, raised all four arms for silence. Order. We will have order in this chamber. The representatives of 50 spacefaring civilizations gradually fell silent, but the tension remained palpable. The Astrian representative, Ambassador Krell, stood at the center of the chamber, his crystalline form vibrating with barely contained emotion. "This is unprecedented," Krell's translated voice echoed through the chamber. The humans concealed their true technological capabilities. They violated every protocol of technological advancement reporting. They must be sanctioned. A low murmur rippled through the chamber. The Astrian Empire had never been defeated in open combat, not in 10,000 years of recorded history. Their military doctrine was considered the pinnacle of warfare evolution in the galaxy. Yet somehow, a species that had achieved faster-than-light travel barely a century ago had not only repelled their fleet, but had done so without destroying a single Astrian ship. Perhaps a new voice cut through the murmur. We should be asking different questions. All eyes turned to Representative Sen of the Archival Collective, their holographic form shifting like smoke. The humans didn't violate any protocols because they never developed forbidden technology. They simply used permitted technology in ways we never imagined possible. The holographic display shifted, showing detailed analysis of the battle. The quantum drone swarms, the neural network that the humans called the mesh, even their basic ship designs, none of it violated the technological development guidelines that the Council had established millennia ago. Impossible, Krell insisted. Their neural network technology far exceeds their development level. They must have had outside help. No, Sen replied softly. They had something far more powerful: necessity. Unlike every other species in this chamber, humans evolved on a death world, facing constant threats to their survival. They developed technology not through careful planned progression, but through desperate innovation. The display shifted again, showing Earth's violent history. But instead of focusing on the wars that every species assumed had held humanity back, it highlighted something else: their rate of adaptation and innovation. Look at their pattern of development, Sen continued. Where we see warfare holding back progress, they turned conflict into a crucible of innovation. Every war led to technological leaps, not despite the destruction, but because of it. They don't think like us because they couldn't afford to. High Counselor Zixtal leaned forward. Explain the neural network. How did they achieve such sophistication without advanced AI? A new hologram appeared, showing the human mesh in action. They didn't try to replicate consciousness artificially, Sen explained. They found a way to link existing consciousness together. It's so obvious that we all missed it. They turned their greatest weakness, their chaotic, emotional thought patterns, into their greatest strength. The chamber erupted again, but this time with a different tone. Representatives from dozens of species began pulling up their own data, re-examining human development patterns through this new lens. They're not just warriors, Senator Varel of the Science Directorate suddenly announced. Look at their medical technology. They've been applying the same principles there. Their surgical techniques, their drug development. It's all based on adaptation rather than perfection. The implications began to sink in. Humanity hadn't cheated their way to advancement. They had simply taken a completely different path, one that no other species had considered viable. Where the galaxy's elder races had sought perfection through careful, controlled development, humans had embraced chaos and uncertainty as tools for growth. We have a decision to make, High Counselor Zixtal announced. The Astrine Empire demands sanctions, but perhaps we should consider another possibility. They paused, their compound eyes scanning the chamber. Perhaps it's time for the Council itself to learn something new. The holographic display shifted one final time, showing the aftermath of the battle. The Astrian fleet, intact but thoroughly defeated, limping away from Earth. The human quantum drones, still moving in their beautiful, unpredictable patterns. And between them, a moment captured in time, the birth of a new era in galactic history. The humans have shown us something remarkable, Zixtal continued, not just in warfare, but in thinking itself. They've proven that there is more than one path to advancement. The question now is, are we wise enough to learn from them? The chamber fell silent as the representatives of humanity's galactic neighbors faced an uncomfortable truth. They had dismissed humans as primitive because they were different. Now they had to decide whether to embrace that difference or fear it. The next few moments would determine not just humanity's fate, but the future of galactic civilization itself. Dr. Samira Khan stood in the newly established Xenotechnology Integration Lab, surrounded by holographic projections of Astrine technology. After their retreat, the Astrines had been forced to leave behind several damaged ships, a goldmine of advanced technology that humanity had been denied access to for decades. "Show me the crystalline matrix structure again," she instructed the lab's eye assistant. The hologram zoomed in on the molecular structure of the Astrine hull material, what other species saw as a pinnacle of engineering perfection. Samira saw as a starting point. "Dr. Khan," a voice called from the doorway. Admiral Santos entered, accompanied by several members of the Galactic Council's scientific observatory team. The aliens had insisted on monitoring humanity's research of Astrine technology, expecting them to take years to understand even the basics. They were about to be surprised again. "Welcome to the XIT lab," Samira greeted them, noting the subtle shifts in the aliens' posture as they observed the hundreds of holographic simulations running simultaneously. "We've made some interesting discoveries about Astrine crystal technology." The Palaxian observer, a towering insectoid being, clicked its mandibles in what their species considered a polite skepticism. The crystalline matrix technology took the Astrines 3 centuries to perfect. It is considered unmatched in the galaxy. Samira smiled. Unmatched doesn't mean unimprovable. "Computer, show Project Phoenix." A new hologram materialized, showing a hybrid material structure. The aliens' postures shifted from skepticism to shock as they recognized elements of the crystalline matrix, but reorganized in ways the Astrines had never considered. "Impossible," the Palaxian observer declared. "The crystal lattice cannot maintain stability in that configuration. It can't in a traditional structure," Samira agreed. "But we're not using a traditional structure. We've integrated biological principles into the crystal growth process. Living cells don't maintain perfect symmetry. They adapt, they flow, they change." She gestured, and the hologram showed the new material in action. Instead of the rigid, perfect crystals the Astrines used, this version could actually flex and respond to stress, much like living tissue. You've corrupted perfect technology. The Moravian observer noted, their harmonics indicating distress. Admiral Santos stepped forward. No, we've evolved it. That's what humanity does. We don't just copy technology, we transform it. The hologram shifted again, showing dozens of variations on the crystal technology, each adapted for different purposes. Some were optimized for energy absorption, others for computational processing, still others for medical applications that the Estrenes had never even considered. But this is beyond your technological level, the Palaxian insisted. Your species hasn't even mastered basic quantum crystallography. We didn't need to, Samira explained. We looked at it differently. Instead of trying to understand every aspect of how it works, we focused on what it does and how it could do it better. We used the mesh to model millions of possible variations simultaneously, guided by human intuition rather than traditional engineering principles. She brought up another display, showing the integration of the modified crystal technology with human quantum field generators. The Estrenes spent centuries perfecting the single approach. We spent 2 weeks exploring 10,000 different approaches, failed fast, learned faster, and found solutions they never imagined. The observers fell silent as they watched simulations of the hybrid technology in action. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just copied advanced alien technology, they had fundamentally reimagined it. This is why we insisted on joining the Galactic Council as equals, Admiral Santos said quietly. We don't want to just use advanced technology. We want to help advance it. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our ability to fight or survive. It's our ability to look at the impossible and see possibilities. One of the alien observers, a silicon-based entity who had remained silent until now, shifted their crystalline form in what might have been appreciation. You understand that this will change everything. The other species will not all react well to such rapid advancement. Samira's expression remained confident but empathetic. Change is scary, but it's also inevitable. We're not trying to prove we're better. We're trying to show that different perspectives make everyone stronger. The galaxy has been stable for millennia, but stability without growth leads to stagnation. As if to emphasize her point, the hybrid crystal matrix in the hologram shifted again, forming new patterns that seemed to dance between order and chaos, strength and flexibility, tradition and innovation. The future of galactic technology would never be the same. And this was just the beginning. 10 months after the Battle of Earth, the Galactic Council's Grand Chamber had changed. Where once there had been rigid hierarchical seating arrangements, now representatives clustered in informal groups, sharing ideas across species boundaries. The humans hadn't just changed technology. They had begun to change the very culture of galactic civilization. High Counselor Zixtal stood at the center of the chamber, their exoskeleton now adorned with patterns inspired by human art. We gather today to vote on the most significant proposal in Council history, the establishment of the Convergence Initiative. The chamber's holographic display showed a massive space station under construction at the intersection of 3 major trade routes. Its design was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, a fusion of dozens of architectural and engineering styles from different species, anchored by human-modified crystal technology. Ambassador Sarah Chen, Earth's first representative to the Council, stepped forward. The last 10 months had aged her, but her eyes shone with the same determination that had helped humanity survive first contact. The Convergence Station will be more than just a research facility, she announced. It will be a symbol of what we can achieve when we stop seeing our differences as barriers and start seeing them as opportunities. The display shifted, showing teams of scientists and engineers from 30 different species working together, sharing not just technology but perspectives. In one section, Astrine crystal crafters worked alongside human quantum physicists, creating hybrid technologies that neither species could have developed alone. In another, Palaxian biotechnology experts collaborated with human medical researchers, revolutionizing both fields. 10 months ago, Sarah continued, "Many in this chamber saw humanity as a threat. Some still do. But look at what we've accomplished since then. The modified crystal technology has revolutionized everything from spacecraft construction to medical devices. The principles of the mesh have been adapted to enhance communication and cooperation between species, and that's just the beginning." The chamber erupted in discussion, but not in the chaos of previous sessions. The conversations were eager, engaged, productive. Even the Astrine representative, though still formal, had abandoned their traditional isolation to engage in technical discussions with others. "There will be challenges," High Counselor Zixtal acknowledged. "Change is never easy, especially for civilizations that have known stability for millennia. But we face a choice: embrace evolution or risk stagnation." The holographic display showed a time-lapse of the changes already spreading through galactic society. Trading posts where species once kept carefully separate now buzzed with mixed groups sharing ideas. Research facilities that had worked in isolation for centuries now hosted cross-species teams. Even the traditionally rigid Astrine Empire had begun experimenting with more flexible military doctrines. But the greatest change, Sarah added, isn't in our technology or our methods. It's in our understanding of advancement itself. We've learned that true progress doesn't come from perfecting a single approach, but from combining different perspectives to create something new. The display showed one final image: a newly commissioned exploration vessel, its crew drawn from 20 different species. Its hull was made of living crystal, grown rather than forged. Its neural network combined artificial intelligence with organic insight. It represented not just a technological breakthrough, but a philosophical one. "The galaxy has been unified for 10,000 years, High Counselor Zixtal noted. But perhaps we had confused unity with uniformity. The humans have shown us that real strength comes from diversity, not just tolerating our differences, but actively combining them to become something greater." As the Council prepared to vote on the Convergence Initiative, Sarah looked around the chamber. She saw not just allies or rivals, but partners in the greatest adventure in galactic history. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not by becoming like the other species, but by showing them a new way forward. "We stand at the dawn of a new era," she concluded. "Not human, not Astrine, not any single species' vision of the future. Something new, something better, together." The vote that followed was not just about a space station or a research initiative. It was about the future of galactic civilization itself. And as the approval indicators lit up one by one, it became clear that the galaxy had chosen evolution over stagnation, innovation over tradition, collaboration over isolation. The age of rigid hierarchies and careful isolation was over. The age of convergence had begun. And humanity, the youngest species in the Council, had helped light the way forward. In the space above Earth, the quantum drones continued their eternal dance, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is not strength or technology, but the simple ability to imagine things differently.